Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming along. I'll just jump right into it. I'll just briefly explain what the campaign is about and what we're trying to do with this hunger strike. And then we'll sort of just hear a few testimonials from Henning in Germany, who did a 28-day hunger strike, I believe, and from Brent and others who've also done a hunger strike. And yeah, so I'll just briefly talk about the campaign. We've started this campaign called Save Old Growth like about 2 months ago, more than that, I think. And we've just finished a month ago our first round of camp actions where we had around 54 arrests. And now we're gearing for a second round of actions where we expect to have around 200 or more arrests, probably more arrests. And the idea is to have many things happening at the same time by the time we're kicking off the second round of actions. So as people know, there's this campaign going on to get school kids to go on strike, where they go on strike and they sit outside their school gate. Then they're going to get dragged off by the police potentially. And then there's our campaign, the main campaign, which is blocking motorways, and we'll be blocking the motorway in Revelstoke, Nanaimo, Vancouver, Victoria, Abbotsford, and Calgary. And we're just going to be recruiting people along the way as well. And so now there's this plan to also do a hunger strike as well. So the idea would be that many different things will be happening at the same time, and it's sort of maximizing the uh, the name recognition of this demand and this campaign, so that it's unavoidable for the federal government. And the plan for the hunger strike is not to demand legislative change to end old growth logging, which is what the main demand is with the motorway campaign. But the point of the hunger strike would be to get a meeting with the Minister of Forestry of British Columbia, which is a demand that is winnable and it's a minor demand. And I think when Henning speaks, he can maybe speak a bit about that as well. So the idea would be to start on the 25th of April, which that's when Brent is starting. So he's the main person who initially said that he can do a hunger strike. We've got one person in Nanaimo, Natalie, who I don't think she could be on this call today, who's also said that she can do an indefinite hunger strike. And the demand is that we're getting a meeting with the forestry minister. And the logic behind this is that when people do a hunger strike before the month of roadblocks that happen on the 4th of April, people sort of warm up to the idea and the demand that are to end old growth logging. Because if PC people go on a hunger strike and do this massive sacrifice, and by the time we start the motorway campaign, we were already 10 days into the hunger strike. And that's going to build sympathy towards the cause and the demand. And so when people get annoyed by the fact that we're disrupting the highways, they have to catch themselves because they already agree with the people who are doing a hunger strike, because a hunger strike is this massive sacrifice where you're not eating for for many weeks, and people inevitably respect that even if they don't agree with you. And then when you start the motorway campaign, people are annoyed by it, but they've already a large portion of them have made up their mind potentially that they are in favor of this. So it puts people in an even bigger dilemma than they would usually be in as a result of the highway blockades that will be happening. So yeah, I obviously don't need to mention this to the people on this call, but Sir David King, as everyone knows, he's a former chief scientific advisor to the British government. He said, we've got 3 to 4 years left to save humanity. We've got that written on our wall at the office. We look at that every day when we come in. And it's actually 3 years now because he said that like 6 months before we started this campaign. So, and there's a call tomorrow actually, so I'll add the Zoom link in. With Sir David King, I think Just Stop Oil is organizing something. And yeah, so basically, like, we just have to do whatever we have to do. People will be going to prison, school kids will be dragged off from outside of their schools, people will be on hunger strikes, and it's really like the last full on effort to re-galvanize the climate movement here in Canada. And we're it, like those of us on this call, those of us who are involved with the motorway campaign, those of us who are involved with the school strikes, we're the only ones in British Columbia right now who are as organized as we necessarily need to be if we're going to win. So it's a massive operation, and we can't afford to lose. And with that, I'll just sort of pass it over maybe to Henning. If Henning, you wanted to just talk a bit about the German last generation hunger strike and yeah, how that went.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can just try to tell you about the setting it took place in. So we had the federal elections here end of September 2020, and we sort of sat together in a team of some people, and we're thinking about how to kickstart the campaign that would go on later. But a friend of mine and myself, we'd already had the idea of doing a hunger strike, and the idea was popping up just left and right. So we saw in the month before multiple people like just having vague ideas about going on hunger strike, and no one really would say, I'm going to do it. Some people said, oh, wouldn't it be great to try to get 100 people to do it and then maybe do it in half a year? And we were like, we don't see anyone doing hunger strikes here in Germany in hundreds of people doing it. If there's not a small group that starts it, like that shows it to the many people. And so the friend of mine and myself, we came to the conclusion that maybe it's just needed that we say we're going to go on hunger strike, for others to also be able to join then, because it seemed to us that yeah, the first step needed to be made there. We've had a little chat with Hoey, the Chinese activist who was on hunger strike in Lausanne, and with Martha in Vienna. She's on hunger strike again now, and she was in May already for like I think 32 days, and now she's like more than I think in her 6th week. I'm not sure. It's yeah, she was the person that got to give us all the medical details about what to expect in what sort of time frames. And we sat together to try to get the media strategy. We've had some calls before and tried to send out some messages, just post some 200, 300 people like here, come and join this briefing. We're going to explain our plan. Our plan is some 15, 20 people on hunger strike before the election, mostly young people. And that's going to shock Germany if they are hospitalized in the days before the election, because their condition weakens over 4 weeks, let's say. And that was our broad plan. And so with that plan in mind, I think for some 20 people over the course of 4 to 5 meetings prepared. So there were like 2 or 3 or 4 people in the meeting. We did some online, some offline in Berlin. We prepared people to get on board by telling them all that was planned by us, that we wouldn't do this saying, oh, it's just a week and then yeah, let's stop just there. But we thought we needed to give it that real indefinite hunger strike. Yeah, to be honest, in not having this method that was used before so many times, just used by some privileged people to get some cheap attention. And there was also a group that wanted to do a 1-week hunger strike, but as soon as they saw us really being committed to doing it longer, they then decided to cancel it, because they knew they would probably not be in the week before the election, they wouldn't get any attention if we were on 3 weeks already, and they do like 3 or 4 days. And we later tried to get them into solidarity hunger striking, which worked on quite some places. So we managed to have 7 people starting the hunger strike then, exactly 4 weeks before the election would take place. And we had organized a camp in the government district in Germany, so some maybe 100 meters from the chancellor's house and the parliament. and we sat down there and built up some tents. There was like a team of, I'd estimate 10 people at the beginning, later maybe 15, but it was mostly just carried by 5, 6, 7, 8 really, really committed people that were doing the support non-stop, that would, yeah, bring us the tents and the heat that we needed, and the tea, and the help with some electricity. We got some batteries there inside the camp to also have some connection to do our media work. And then it kicked off better than we had expected in terms of media attention, because we thought we would have like very low like level of attention, and then maybe after 2 weeks it would hit off, like start getting bigger. But already like in the first days there was a tweet going a little bit half viral, and then there was a little bit of a first regional round of all the Berlin papers going okay on wow and this and that. And we basically from then on had 3 weeks of full on just journalists coming to the camp and speaking to people. So yeah, we did a press training, but I think we could have managed better in that sense. And later on would become to have bigger media attention, and did some press conferences later. Yeah, but maybe I just go through that. So we started with 7 people. One dropped out after 9 days because she couldn't handle really well the pressure. She had decided to go into that quite spontaneously. The other had taken 2 days off just before the hunger strike to just sit together and just only be like connecting. And the 2 to 3 weeks prior to that, I had done a lot of the preparation work. 2 to 3 people helped getting in there, and so we sat in a lot of meetings. Then it started. So after a week, someone dropped out, and then we were getting into touch with so our demand was for the 3 chancellor candidates in the election, the 3 biggest party leaders, to have a conversation with us. 2 hours, 4 people from our team. It should be public. It should be now before the election, to be talking about the murder on the young generation. And the manifesto that we wrote was something we read out multiple times in front of the parliament. We had a daily little, how do you say, like demo for some hours. We sat in front of the parliament. Then we got back to the camp, which got quite stressy later. Not only the like physically going there, but also like the organization. Some would stay back to do some media stuff again, and that sort of stressed the group out a bit. So we later on reduced that to just have it very sometimes, but not every day. And we've had contact to the politicians via mail as good as we could. There were some people helping us in getting more contacts to the politicians, and assuring that the 3 offices had gotten the notice. And I think on day 10 they united, as they never would be, made a statement saying, okay, so the climate is important, but you should stop your hunger strike. You should stop your hunger strike, and you should eat, please. And we can have a debate. We can have a conversation in private and after the election. That's what they offered us. And we said, no, that's not what we think is what our society needs here, to have some honesty. We really hit on that frame to have just an honest conversation with the young people in regards to climate. And the breakdown of the civilization and of all what we would need to live. And that was then with the timing of people getting into hospital just for short amounts of time because they where it was quite hot these days, actually, in September, and 2 people got up too quick at different occasions and lost consciousness just for some moments and were like taken away, and then they continued to be on hunger strike and got back to the camp. And the press conference, I think we did 2 press conferences there, with like after 1 week, after the second week, and after the second week we also stopped taking in the what was it actually, I think, yeah, 300 milliliters of apple juice that we had per day. So that's very little, but a little bit of sugar that we took in. It's nothing. I mean, you could see in our faces and on the weight that we were losing weight quite quickly. I think we have a table of that, of how quickly we lost it. Some people, like, as you know, we've lost a lot of kilos in the first 3, 4, 5 days, and then it was a little bit more stable, like losing, slowly going down and down. I did a video blog, others did interviews, and there was a spokesperson for us that later on would take on more of the media role as we got weaker. And after 2 weeks, we stopped taking in that juice. But we still, as we did from the beginning, took some vitamin pills and took some salt in water and tea. And it got colder, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, there's lots to talk about. Maybe I try to cut it short. So after 20 days, I think, 2 18-year-old pupils that were with us on hunger strike ended the hunger strike. And on day, I think it was 22, 3 other people ended the hunger strike. So there was only me from the beginning of the hunger strike. And there were people that had joined the last week before the election. Across Germany, there would be like 3 Solidarity hunger strikers right from the beginning that would stop after like 15 days or something, quite quietly. So they were having mobilizations effect in their areas, but not in media attention so big. But we could have that as a press conference speaking, because they were older than we were. We were all 27 was one, and we were all below 23, the others. So 18 and 19 and 22 and 21 and 24, I think. Yeah, no, the last week some joined, and I was the only one from the beginning who was still on hunger strike. And we had an event announced, I think in week 3, saying, okay, we're gonna meet you, because you were saying all sorts of stuff, the politicians, with this, oh yeah, we can meet after the election, and it's so hard to have any time in our calendar. And we said, no, it's not hard to find time in your calendar. You can just come down on Thursday, 4 days before the election, and meet us here in front of the parliament. We're going to be here, and if you're not here, we're going to replace you with something, as a reminder to the people of this country. And we will not stop hunger striking before we get the conversation needed, with all honesty, And the yeah, so then we got on to say that we're gonna go on thirst strike if they're not gonna come. And on the Thursday itself, none of the 3 candidates came. We had a phone call to the Green Party before, the leader of the Green Party, who's now our foreign minister, and she said, yeah, she has kids, and it's also she knows how bad it is with the climate, and so, but she wouldn't talk to us there. And the Social Democrat leader seemed to us like the right person to pinpoint and say, so what about you? Like, we know this conservative guy is just, he was laughing at the flood victims or at a ceremony for the flood victims in Germany of the huge floods we had here. So everyone was like ridiculing him for climate anyway. So what about you, Scholz, the now chancellor? Back then, one of the favorites in the last weeks to be the chancellor. And so we, on the event where none of the three came, replaced them with ice blocks on chairs, slowly melting. Held, I think, an hour of quite a long scientific climate. This is the state where we're at, with some motivational stuff at the beginning and the end, like existential, this is it stuff. And then said, okay, we're going to go on thirst strike in 2 days. So Saturday, the day before the election. And I was quite weakened at that point. We were going to go on thirst strike if he doesn't announce that we're in a climate emergency. And then we got into contact with his office directly. So at the Friday, before we would start the thirst strike on Saturday, we were having calls with the office and saying, okay, if you're not agreeing to saying aloud, like publicly, that this is an emergency and not only the climate change that's man-made, what he used to say, we would end. We'd also end if he announced a public conversation after the election now, which would be a like safe phasing, face saving this way around move for them. And the next day came, they didn't call us back. And I was on thirst strike after 27 days of hunger striking and being quite weak, so my pulse of my heart was very low, and then going on thirst strike. And after 7 hours of not drinking, my phone rang, and it was Olaf Scholz, and he declared he would do a public conversation in the 4 weeks after the election with the two of us that were on thirst strike, and he would post it on his Twitter. And we needed to stop with that. So we said, yeah, we're going to stop with this. And we announced it, and he announced it, and we had the conversation because we wished so 6 weeks after the election, it fit better into our motorway blockade mobilization program, and had some 50K people watching on a YouTube live stream. Unfortunately, they successfully had the media out, the television that wanted to cover it wasn't present in the room, but was quite a good success. We had quite some influence on the discourse as we had hoped, and it had a happy end. I was on 3 days of intense hospital care there, and then 5 days of just normal refeeding program, not being too quick there, and then doing mobilization 50 talks around Germany.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, I remember we did a Skillshare at one point, and Henning was calling in from the hospital. It was just like 1 or 2 days after I think the hunger strike had ended, which is very powerful to see. But yeah, I know it's quite late in Germany, so unless people have any questions right now, we can do that, and then we can let you go. Howard, go ahead. You're on mute.
Well, congratulations on getting your demands met, Henning. Henning, I just want to clarify that. So you had 3 demands then, right? One was to meet, one was the declaration of the climate emergency, and the third was to constitute an assembly of some sort afterwards then. So were all those 3 announced at the outset of the, and there were no others, right? No other demands, just the 3?
That's correct. Yeah, we had 2 demands to be so we had the meeting to have an honest conversation, and to have a Bürgerinnenrat, so a citizens assembly after the election, that the government would give power to decide on stuff. And media actually reported about that also. And we later on focused on saying we should meet to have the climate discourse here before the election. And then after they all had said no, we switched to have just one person in our focus framing and saying we need the emergency declaration, and then he gave us a compensation.
Now, did you ask the same political entities the 3 demands before you began the hunger strike? Because this is a concern that I have with our demand. Is I've been able to get appointments with you know, even the premier on down, right, and even a prime minister in the past. It wasn't like it was impossible, and yet the last time I did a hunger strike, both the premier and the federal leader, it was a week in, and we were right, you know, on the other side of the glass door from them, and they wouldn't come out to talk to us. So I kind of wonder if in respect to ourselves, if it would be prudent to put it in writing ahead of time, because otherwise your only course is to intimidate them with the hunger strike, and that may come back to haunt us later if we didn't actually make a formal invitation first.
I think it's a good idea to invite them before. And yeah, one of the main reasons people said they couldn't meet is so now then everybody would do hunger strikes all over Germany, and so we can't allow that. And yes, I think this being recognized for us wouldn't have. So we did before the motorway blockades, for example, now in open letter, and even with the attention of the hunger strike, they completely ignored us. Like we said, let's try to get these points done, and they completely ignored us and didn't take us seriously until we got onto the motorway. But I think having that is a good way to go and really have directions where they can agree to this debate. And it was important for us to have it public. So without the publicity, we would have gotten a meeting, I'm quite sure. But with publicity, it's way harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Brent, and then Starling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Henning. Just a couple of quick questions. Just wondering how important you think having a camp in the public eye with a bunch of people there is in the whole design of the hunger strike. And then also, I'm just wondering, like, I understand, you know, people can live without food for about 40 days and without water for about 4. Do you think it would be okay to, you know, do a 2 or 3 week hunger strike and then go right into the no drinking?
Yeah, so on the first stuff, the camp, I think made a lot of sense, in the sense that every one of the media people knew where to go when they wanted to do stories about us. It was really accessible, even though we later had to have some people to protect the camp. So not letting everyone go in, and everyone, not only during the pandemic, but also people like just coming there, answering random questions. But it was everyone knew to get a report would be to come there, and to get the images of them sitting there in the camp also made, I think, quite a lot of sense. And I'm doubtful about, for example, what Martha is doing with working alongside hunger striking for too long. Also, the people that were on solidarity hunger strike with us worked in their cities across Germany, and they weren't in Berlin, and they, I think, only influenced their direct surroundings without gaining that media attention. So I think some sort of Greta-esque, I'm sitting here in front of, you know, is definitely helpful. And yeah, we talked about this with different people before, and it wasn't easy to set up the camp, but we did it. And so the second question was how to, like, what I think about going on third strike earlier, and it was very yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just going to say, like you said, just to be able to to basically threaten our own death with and do it within a limited time, more limited time space. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we knew that we would need to have it escalate before the election. So that was our plan all along. So we knew we wouldn't sit there, oh, 4 weeks were fine. Now let's go into week 5 and 6, because the election would have happened and everyone would have, like, the story wouldn't have made so much sense. We felt that we all agreed on before the election, either being hospitalized and ending, or doing it until like as we said, like the life lies in the hands of the ones that we demand an honest conversation, just an honest attitude towards this crisis. And so we had a lot of controversy about with all this dry hunger strike. So to be frank, I think 80% of our media team turned some of them against us. Some dropped out. The Telegram chat, which was a little bit of our discussion chat with some 150 people or something, went la da 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 da. But is it da da da? And then the parts of the hunger strike, some of them that had ended, actually had themselves distancing from those continuing and trying to block them, because they were so afraid of ruining the image of the hunger strike that it had so far achieved. Maybe I just mentioned the open letter from the top German scientist Schellenhuber that he wrote, which was one of the pieces that gave us huge attention. The Merkel government also said we should stop hunger strike and da da da, and all that would be destroyed by us going on thirst strike there. And that was quite hard because we had talked about it before, that this might be an option to increase and to, like, not take the sugar in anymore, to maybe go without drinking. But I think we failed in having the group cohesion to carry this harsh decision with us, and we didn't talk about it enough before, because we only had like 3 preparation weeks, to be honest, and with some of the people only some days, and that wasn't good. Just, yeah, so I think it makes sense to know in that time frame we can, with not drinking anymore, escalate it as a tool to threaten the own death. And I think Scholz wouldn't have said yes to this if he wouldn't have had been in fear of having the news of someone die or nearly die before the election, just one day before the election, with him as the favorite going into it, the small favorite. Yeah.
Thank you, Henning. Very inspiring. Thanks.
Charlotte?
Yeah, just first of all, thanks so much for coming on this call. You're such an inspiration, badass motherfucker. But yeah, I'm just wondering, after all this that you went through, like, would you do it again?
So I think we'd do it again with like not having this desperate few people move again, because I think this like only works once in a way that I think, yeah, the story would need to be updated in some sense, but I would participate, to be sure. Yeah.
I think that, sorry, go ahead.
That's fucking great. That's what I thought you'd say, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's funny to know that we had actually a lot of talk about being back office or going full on in, and some people said, yeah, I'm in. We actually had way more women saying they're gonna go in, and in the end we were 4 a little bit older men, a few years older, and the 2 18 years old people. So we were yeah, just before the days we were like, oh shit, the numbers are falling apart. We were thinking about 15 people. We recruited some 10 to 15 people, somewhere between, and like 5-10 people dropped off, because we said we're gonna do this like seriously, so better be honest with yourselves and drop off before like going out after day 5 or 10. And the decision then came for me only a few days before the beginning of the hunger strike that I would now take part, because prior to that I thought I would be the back office person doing it all, even though in the beginning I had said, me and my friend, we're gonna do it. It was a little bit of doing it or not, but going all in what is needed, and I felt that was needed by me. And if I feel this is needed by me again, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We just to give some updates to people. There's an ultimatum that is being drafted right now. So the idea would be to demand a public meeting with the forestry minister, and that's the only thing, unless there are other people have other ideas. But the ultimatum will go out within the next couple of days to the forestry minister, to the premier, and to the media team of the BC government. And sorry, Henning, do you have something to say?
Yeah, just we were during the hunger strike and now during the motorways, we are a little bit of calling it ultimatum or not, kind of not sure, and the data for us isn't clear, but we feel that if you manage to get the media attention without calling it ultimatum, while being one, like a strong invitation to do so, and if not doing it by this date, then we're going to start something, would have helped us get out of this you force us to do stuff kind of frame that during our motorway blockades definitely stuck way harder to us than during the hunger strike, where we like sort of tried to, in the framing, go more on the Gandhian invitation than the coercion kind of framing, like just the strength, the power of language usage, I think, to make clear on what side we're on.
Yeah, that's very good. Howard? You're on mute.
Sticky mouse. Henning, I'm wondering if you had, in respect to the demands, I'm just looking for clarity. This was the chancellor, right? That you directed the demands at?
No, it was so the government would be rebuilt after the election, of course, and we asked the three party leaders of the three biggest parties, which were the Social Democrats, so-called, the Greens, so-called, and the Conservative Party. And for a year, people had already been like, who's gonna win? And in the end, it seemed like the Greens stood no chance of being the strongest party. The Social Democrats had some surge in the polls, and the Conservatives tried to hold on to any power that they had before, because Merkel was, of course, their leader before. And then we stuck it to Scholz just in the last days to not have this wibbly wobbly, no one's gonna answer because we're all in this, I can't answer because the other two, and we agreed to not do anything. We've had a little bit of conversation with the left party to pressure the Greens more, because if the left would talk to us in a public way, then the Greens would have been under more pressure because of their base supporting a conversation. But then we just went to the chancellor candidate, who was finance minister in the old government.
With us, we don't have a imminent election, and what I was thinking would be that given that our federal leader, our prime minister, signed the deforestation pledge at COP on behalf of Canada, and we have a premier that embraced COP, but when it comes down to the provincial local level here in British Columbia, they're virtually reneging, and the federal government is really no different either. So what strikes me is that we should have both a a provincial and federal targets with the same demand, and bringing in the international element is kind of key for deforestation as well, because when we go to court, because we our federal government doesn't really have any binding legislation that means that the provincial and Supreme Court has to abide by being a Canadian signatory to an international treaty of any sort. We're kind of when it comes to there's no benefit in the court system for us, where if we did make that connection, there might be, where many of us that are shutting down the highways would then have something to grasp onto, that the justices that we would be facing would then be placed in a major legal conundrum, right? So that's one way of approaching it, because if we did get that a pledge from either the provincial or federal leaders on that, or even better, if there was an ecocide law that was enacted in the middle of it, we could refer to that as well. But this is one of the I see, if we our first demand is to get the meeting. The second is, what are we asking for when we do meet, and thirdly is what's really the follow-up that ensures that it actually happens, right? So there's a legal component to it, and on that basis, I'm just wondering if there was one with your strike in that respect. That is there anything that was binding that came out of the? Otherwise, is it just a sort of a cosmetic declaration of the climate emergency? Because we've got it here in Canada, but there's nothing that is binding about it, right?
Yeah, so I tried to get on points really quick. If you miss something, go ahead with the concrete question, so I can try to find that. I'm not in the specifics of the Canadian situation. I was thinking while you were describing it that I think the Italians are definitely the ones to speak to in regards of thinking about who to take as the target for a conversation ending a hunger strike, and saying we're going to try to get multiple people to be addressed, so that we have a higher chance of getting people there. And I think in some sense that are at least thoughts to be had, because we had I didn't paint the full story of the meeting on the Thursday before the election, because the Green Party actually sent their co-party leader, who's now the Minister of Economy and Climate stuff in Germany. And so the Greens have two faces basically, and they sent the other one to our conversation on the Thursday after we had ended. He came there where it was dark to speak with us there. And I think in that sense, one could end on a, even without getting this pledge to have a conversation from the highest of persons, of people there. And yeah, I think we didn't really get any pledge on doing anything that would be more than they had already said in their programs. And in the conversation with Scholz, we jumped in to try and get him out of this emotionless sphere of him just saying, yeah, calm down, so this is all we're going to do, da, 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 da. With him actually being at one point, how do you come to this like insane insane calculation of yours that we are not caring about the climate and being a bit louder about that. And we had some Argentinian activists asking about fracking, which we could now use because they're now expanding it to say we need less dependency on Russian stuff and need more fracking. So people are talking about more fracking here. But yeah, so we didn't get any declaration of the emergency or any of that. He stuck to his climate change, which is man-made kind of wording, and only managed to get the conversation to later on say, from this conversation, we would have a demand presented to them there, and then to have a legitimacy for our blockades. Yeah, I had one more thought, but I lost it. Yeah.
One last question, and I'm just wondering, in your discussions at the camp, did it come up that there's always a contingency of worst case scenario happening before you end the strike, right? And I have a problem sort of pitching to other people to join a strike if there's a possibility that if the demand isn't strong enough, and say, particularly with older people, I'm pressing, getting close to 70. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that if I were to go, 6 weeks on a strike, that something that I didn't anticipate, like a heart attack or something, or a stroke, and I could never forgive myself for recruiting anybody that something like that happened to, or try to explain it to their family, if there wasn't something really concrete that actually was successfully won from that, right? So yeah, that's what's kind of critical for me, is that, because we are talking about potentially a life and death situation. If we take that seriously, and I think we should, and I do think that it could happen. It could happen, right? So what is it that, so just wondering if that came up in your deliberations, that we needed, Germany really needed something really a little more than just just yet another pledge, right?
Yeah, so I think it's very good that you raised this point. I'm not. I think it's very important not to be talked into or sucked into a hunger strike and a life-threatening or life or death situation. It's so important that you have your personal thoughts on this in a long and detailed way before any decision is taken. And then I think the group spirit can lead you to a sort of point of knowing this is a group effort, but is still like not the group taking over the decision over the individual to go on and on if he or she has any I mean, a lot of stuff can happen, and these are stress situations. And we had a checkup with the doctor, each and every one of us, before we got in, to try and find all the possible stuff that you could see before going on hunger strike, which would increase the risk of having strokes or any failures. And we were like, that's more the medical side of it. I could go more into that, or try to find some document on that. But the checkup that we had, trying to find out what our condition would be, to be able to decide, no, I'm continuing with this, and I know my it's not the next day I'm gone and I didn't know. So as good as we could, we tried to go with that. And we had some discussion about even mobilizing at all, or briefing or pitching at all. And so we are doing it very carefully, I think. And that's why there weren't 20 people joining. And then we had some conversation about people under the age of 18 and how to deal with them, which would be a separate issue. But yeah, I don't know if I can say any more stuff about that. Try to find your inspiration, not in us to push you over any lines, but in what you feel is right in this moment. And yeah, we've read quite some history about hunger strikes that helped us also keep up the motivation and the knowledge of these historical situations and what it meant to us. So I think on Hungerstreik 2021.de, even though you would need to translate it as well, we've tried to collect some of the stuff there.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could start wrapping up by maybe doing a round of checkouts and what we can commit to with regards to this campaign, whether it's a hunger strike or whether it's doing any of the logistical stuff that, like, for example, setting up tents outside the legislature in Victoria or stuff like that. But yeah, maybe Brent, we can start with you because you're our lead hunger striker. So.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great meeting. I really enjoyed hearing from Henning, and really want to say how much respect I have for what you and everyone did there in Germany. And I'm committing to at least a 3-week hunger strike right now. That's the time I have off from work, but I'm considering, going further than that. And but it's a hard thing to contemplate, going to the lengths that you did, Henning, and ending up in the hospital. But I think, things are so serious now that there's not really much choice. So yeah, that's my commitment, to do at least 3 weeks and possibly more. And I think it would be good if everyone doing this in Canada could get together, sometime soon and just discuss a few of the things that were brought up in this meeting as far as strategies and demands goes. But thanks. Pass back to you.
Yeah, Howard, maybe. Or
Yeah, I like Brent. I just want to echo your again our gratefulness for you being on the call and sharing your story of the strike. I and how successful it ultimately was. With ourselves and the legislature, there is a problem with a camp occupation. There's a outstanding injunction against anything like that right now, or being even near the entrances if they want to enforce it, right? So one alternative is there's lots of nearby churches that we could be at, and then we just go down, like where we could set up a camp and then move down to the legislature every day. At some point, it may have to be in wheelchairs, but yeah, it can be done, I think. And clearly that is the place to do it. And maybe one way would be to consider, everybody after the first week from other parts of BC would actually come to the camp after the first week. That way it sort of thins out those that are just experimenting with it, and it would mean a much smaller camp too, which might be easier for whoever's hosting it, right? So again,
yeah.
thank you, Henning.
Ava, do you want to say something?
Sure, yeah. So I'm glad I have a second here, because I really, I love, as soon as I saw that there was a hunger strike happening, I got really excited because I had heard about what was happening in Germany and that it worked. And well, the meeting became public. And so my concern is that I'm a pretty underweight individual, and it's funny because my friends know that I want to do this, and they keep advising me not to. And I know I can hear like my doctors in my head, like from the past, telling me that I'm not the best condition to do it, but in the same breath, it's like I educate people constantly, and I seem to be the only one that I know that's at this level of concern. And so, yeah, like I know I could like basically just ramp up my diet for a couple weeks and kind of like make a safety plan type idea. And like obviously no one's telling anyone to go into this and just like do it, but like I know the risks. Well, I've got to like map out all the different things that could happen to me, but at the same time, yeah, I guess I just want to participate in it. And I'm not super good with media and such like that. So I don't know, maybe there's some other like piece in it that would be best for me so that I can continue to participate, because I also don't want to bring down like the team by like stepping out early in any way. And so, but I wonder too, maybe I can commit to like this amount because I'm such a small person or something like that. Because I feel maybe I'm not the only person, like someone else was mentioning, like those who are vulnerable, like elders at risk and such like that. So yeah.
Yeah, Norman, do you want to say a few things?
No, I don't have anything to really add, other than thank you to Henning and the rest of you.
Yeah, thanks a lot everyone for coming, and I'll just pass this recording to around in the movement if we'd like Save Old Growth so that other people can see it who couldn't join in. And yeah, people can make the decision, because I know there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know about breaking my release conditions, even though some people will be breaking their release conditions. I think there are some people who would be interested in doing this as an alternative to maybe going on remand. So that'll be something helpful for that. Henning, do you want to say just a few last words before we wrap up?
Yeah, thank you. Just a few last words, I think, is that I definitely recommend going into a session just about medical stuff, because from this meeting one can't get any of the information that I think is like very, very needed on that topic. So regarding all the questions of what's about people underweight or older, and like it can be very individual consequences in the hunger strike that one should also like be aware of, like preconditions in any way. And I think it's so valuable to be talking about this in a strategic way, because this deeply motivated us, saying we can have influence in what we can try to do in this crisis, but we should also only go in very prepared. And I just wanted to state and underline that again.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion.
And don't eat in front of those that are hunger striking. I had a call actually with I think some international people there, and someone was eating there, and it didn't it wasn't hard for me, but they then were like, oh no, I should get it away. But I think
Brent,
in the beginning it's important to keep up the respect and motivation for those that are craving for some food.
Brent,
Yeah,
Brent
we did a short hunger strike last year, Zane and I and one other person, and a really nice bike courier came every day and ate his lunch in front of us. So it's very fun.
They said on Twitter, we're going to throw Snickers at you. That's the haters' new phrase.
Also, yeah, Henning, we can be in touch about like if you have any documents on like the medical stuff and just this sort of logistical stuff, that would be really cool. But yeah, thanks everyone, and I'll send you all the recording, and yeah, have a nice day.